What's going on, fellow A-plussers? It is I, your host, as always, Adam Perez, coming through once again. Another review as we get into some Star Wars talk tonight for our Book of Boba Fett review, as we're about to go ahead and break down and discuss Chapter 6 of this particular limited series, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. This is actually the penultimate episode. We've got one more to go before we certainly wrap up. And if you ask me, I feel like there's a lot to certainly still be explored with one more episode to certainly go. So it does make me wonder, how will not only this limited series wrap itself up, will there be connective pieces that will really launch us into the Mandalorian season 3? It definitely feels as though they are certainly leaving breadcrumbs and storyline details. This, honestly, can I be honest with you guys? This episode truly did feel more like and I said this last week, that it definitely felt like a prequel to season 3, almost like an interlude between Mandalorian season 2 and season 3. While I know that this certainly was a limited series for Boba Fett, the first 3 episodes definitely have heavily focused on Boba along with a little bit of his past. But within the past 2 episodes, this series has really sort of just flipped its switch and has really started focusing a lot more on Mando, Din Djarin along with Grogu. As this particular episode, guys, just continues to open up the floodgates in regards to just all the amazing sort of returning characters that we've seen before, and some even brand new familiar faces that maybe we've seen in animation form, but are finally making their live action debut. I mean, this episode was just massive, if you ask me, guys. Just so much stuff certainly going on, and definitely a lot to certainly talk about. First thing I definitely want to go ahead and bring up, kudos to Dave Filoni. He actually not only directed this episode, but co-wrote this episode along with Jon Favreau. And writing style-wise, this feels very much like all Dave Filoni. For me personally, the return and live-action debut of Cad Bane is something that I personally have been wanting for quite some time. I've been spearheading sort of the comeback Cad Bane sort of what do you call it? I don't know. I've been really wanting to see his character come back ever since I think the first season of The Mandalorian, when we kind of got teased as to who the mysterious character certainly was. But it's taken us a couple seasons to finally get there. But Cad Bane is certainly back. And I do want to say, in regards to Dave Filoni, this is probably my favorite episode that I've seen Dave Filoni do in regards to his run when it comes to live action. I know a lot of people have been really wanting Dave Filoni to get more involved in live action, really wanting him to dive into the movies. Kathleen Kennedy had a much better plan for him, if you ask me. Not only continuing to do animation, but linking him up with somebody like a Ryan Johnson over on The Last Jedi, linking him up with J.J. Abrams, linking him up with Jon Favreau, to go ahead and really allow him to pick up the reins and learn what it's like to be able to be a director when it comes to live action. And honestly, every time that I've seen the Dave Filoni episode so far, I've been really impressed. I feel like he continues to get better and better and better with each time that I see his directing. So if you ask me, while I don't necessarily know if I'm ready to give Dave Filoni his own movie right this day, maybe in about like a year or so, maybe a year or two, I would absolutely love to see Dave Filoni finally direct a Star Wars movie, and maybe even write one himself. He kind of reminds me of Travis Knight, that just did the Bumblebee movie a couple years ago, right? Most of his directorial work was very much in animation, slow motion capture and things like that, working with claymation. I think there is something really valuable about people that have that eye for animation, that know what they visually certainly want to see on the screen, sort of thing. If you can tap into what you want to see and be able to learn the skills of what it takes to actually direct, and be able to capture those same scenes in live action, I think you're onto something there. And I think Dave Filoni will go on to be an amazing director when it comes to Star Wars. He just has that keen eye. And it definitely helps that this man is like an encyclopedia. I feel like every time somebody talks about Dave Filoni, they're talking about his knowledge. And with him having worked right under George Lucas all those years, you can definitely understand. So great directorial episode here for Dave Filoni. And then, of course, just the massive returns that we wind up having. The Marshal, played by Timothy Oliphant, which I love him as an actor. So great to certainly see him back. We get to see a returning Grogu. We get to see Ahsoka as Rosario Dawson portrays her role once again. We get to see R2D2 who pops up in here. Even Luke himself. I mean, massive episode that I did not expect to see all this carry on. So I don't even know where to begin, guys, but let's start with just the Western aspect of this particular episode as we get to focus a little bit more on the Marshal along with Cad Bane. It's very much under the impression to me that clearly Cad Bane is the enforcer now when it comes to the Pyke Syndicate. They're getting ready for war, clearly bringing their people into Tatooine, have really picked up on the idea that Boba Fett is going around and asking people first to certainly help him out. We even get the opportunity to see the Mandalorian, Din Djarin himself, approach the Marshal in here, asking for his help. You know, while Boba definitely has some muscle on his team as of right now, he is missing numbers. And so based off of what we saw in the Mandalorian season 2, Din Djarin knows exactly who to ask, and he winds up going to the Marshal. They have now named their town Freetown, if I'm not mistaken. And he goes in to certainly ask his people for help, a decision that the Marshal certainly has to make. I think we even get introduced to his new deputy in town, which unfortunately doesn't last very long whatsoever. But I think Timothy Oliphant is such a great actor, and he portrays sort of that Western vibe so incredibly well. I mean, from the moment that he interrupts the Pyke and sort of their spice trading that they're doing in front of him, right? The spices for the gold sort of thing. I love the idea of just that mentality that he has of like an old school Western guy, just very Clint Eastwood like, if you ask me. And I think Timothy Oliphant does an incredible job allowing one of the Pykes to certainly go, right? The smarter one who didn't draw his weapon on him. Love the little shot of him kicking over the spices and things like that. Even the idea of the Pyke guy said this spice or something like that, what's in the box is worth more than your town. And it just really continues to go to show just how much the Pykes are really trying to draw all the attributes out of Tatooine, if you will, right? Taking all of their spices, trying to control, will eventually kind of move in. So you can clearly see what it is that Boba is certainly trying to stop from happening in here. But I love the appearance of Cad Bane. I truly do. Just when you think that the Marshal was going to enjoy his time in his town by himself once Mando winds up leaving, a new stranger comes walking into town, man. And it definitely has the classic sort of Western vibe, if you will, the lone Westerner, you know, trudging through the desert, making his way to the town, if you will, having a sort of standoff, if you will, also just definitely brought the chills, especially for me, for somebody that's really been promoting and really shouting out to the heavens, please let Cad Bane actually make his debut at some particular point in time. And they finally gave it to us. And guys, they did not disappoint. I mean, you want to talk about just accuracy from the animation. This was probably better than I even thought that they would certainly handle Cad Bane in regards to his presentation. I mean, his voice is on par also. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the voice actor that plays Cad Bane, Corey Burton, in the animated series, also reprised his role in this particular episode to do the voice for Cad Bane. It looks like they literally ripped him out of animation, made him even look a little bit more terrifying. I think even Corey Burton's voice sounds a little bit more terrifying than it normally has when it comes to Cad Bane 2. I was just a really big fan of his representation, to the point of seeing him mow down not only the Marshal, who I'm hoping Timothy Oliphant's okay. I'm really hoping that he's all right. But poor deputy didn't even stand a chance, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I felt like the moment that I saw this guy, the deputy, there was a part of me that said, I don't think he's going to survive through this episode. And lo and behold, homeboy did not, unfortunately. A little bit too itchy on that trigger. You know what I'm saying? Wanted to go cause some problems. Because I don't necessarily, I'm trying to think if Cad Bane would have pulled out his gun had the deputy not. But I think Cad Bane for some business and really don't interfere with whatever the Pyke Syndicate certainly has. Don't go to Boba. Don't give him your soldiers. Don't help him out in whatsoever. And as long as you do that, the Pike's got no issues with you whatsoever. So definitely a stern warning. And it will be kind of curious to see if we're going to see him again in next week's episode. And that's one of the questions that I have is how much story is there certainly left to tell, right? We've got one more episode left. I have appreciated the fact that the past two episodes have been 40 plus minutes long. So I'm really hoping that they really push that envelope for the last episode, whether that be 50 minutes, 55 minutes, hell, give me an hour if you want to. I would be kind of curious, are we going to get that war on Tatooine, that crime war? Or is all of this just sort of a buildup to a massive escalation and a cliffhanger, and it winds up continuing in Mandalorian season 3? I really hope not. Because while I certainly have enjoyed the Mandalorian's its first two seasons, and I'm really looking forward to season 3. There is a part of me that wants this Book of Boba Fett limited series to be able to sort of wrap up on its own. You know, while I have enjoyed the past two episodes, if you ask me, I think they're the best two episodes that we've gotten out of the Book of Boba Fett. And I guess to me, for me, it makes me think, well, what does that say about the Book of Boba Fett as a series when your most enjoyable moments have come from the Mandalorian? And while we have had moments of Boba Fett shining in here, for me, I've enjoyed his story being told from the flashbacks to the present day sort of thing. This series has kind of felt like it's jumped the shark a bit in the sense of forgetting that it's a Book of Boba Fett story and has really turned into a prequel for Mandalorian season 3. Again, like I get the idea that this is a spin-off of the Mandalorian, but when it's called the Book of Boba Fett, there is a part of me that thinks that the main focus should be on those characters. And I don't mind a Mando cameo here, you know, maybe him arriving on Tatooine to kind of help. That's cool and all. But when you start including other characters that we've seen from Mandalorian, like Luke, R2, Ahsoka, like the list goes on and on. The mechanic, right? Like even she's in this series too. The list just keeps going on, and it makes me feel like they stopped relying on the story of Boba Fett and really started relying more on the Mandalorian. Like all this setup, I really would like to see this in season 3. Give Boba Fett the shine that he certainly deserves, because right now it feels very much like, why did we bring this character into a prominent show or back to out of the freaking, Sarlacc pit if we're just gonna write 3 episodes of him and overshadow him? You know what I mean? Like, while I have really enjoyed this limited series, it's gotten better once Mando wind up joining. I didn't mind the Boba Fett stuff, but at the same time, I feel like this is damn disrespectful of Boba. You know what I'm saying? But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just certainly feeling a certain way. Marcelino does say maybe Boba Fett could have joined the Mandalorian's adventure. You show more of Mando's story while having Boba Fett along. And I definitely would agree. And if anything, I'm hoping that Boba does pop up at least in Mandalorian season 3. But I think if you're going to have a limited series, 7 episodes only, and you're calling it the Book of Boba Fett, all 7 episodes need to have Boba Fett in them. And so I think it's a little bit of a disservice. I don't necessarily know if I'm enjoying the execution of it, but the storyline has really worked for me, honestly. But yeah, man, the Marshal, Timothy Oliphant, is back along with Cad Bane. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this works out. And then next, we definitely have to dive a little bit into the Mando and Grogu storyline here. Last week we heard that Mando wanted to wait a minute before joining up with Boba. He had unfinished business. He had this fantastic armor that made for Grogu. We just talked about it over here a couple weeks ago. I had my fingers crossed, or last week I had my fingers crossed thinking, please be a chainmail armor. Please be chainmail armor. And I thought it was absolutely the cutest thing. Luke Skywalker holding up the little chainmail to kind of show Grogu what the Mandalorian had certainly brought to him. So great armor piece, if you ask me personally. I love this father and son connection. And I don't know, and honestly, I enjoyed the connection even before I had my own kid. But I think now, being even a father and experiencing a newborn baby for myself, that attachment certainly is real. And I continue to love just the inner conflict that Din Djarin is going through. Clearly in love, clearly caring, see the best for him, wanting him to certainly be protected. You know what I mean? That to go ahead and armor to him himself. I love the moment between him and Ahsoka in here, where Ahsoka's really just trying to kind of give Din Djarin an explanation as to where Grogu is in his life, right? Is he a foundling or is he now a Padawan, right? And I love that it, even though it's one of those things that even though we can't see the Mandalorian's expressions, I think Pedro Pascal does a great job just with vocalizing him and whoever the suit actor is too at any particular given time. The idea to be able to stay there in silence, maybe do a little expression of sign, just deep thinking and contemplating that idea of kind of seeing, Din Djarin understanding he's kind of got to let Grogu go if he really wants to see this kid flourish into what he can truly become. Just that idea of being able to walk away and knowing that maybe walking away is the best thing that you can certainly do for the growth of Grogu. I just really liked seeing Mando having to deal with all that in his head, right? Am I here to see him or do I just want to protect him, right? Like I just love the position that Ahsoka kind of puts him in to really make him make the decision as to whether or not he personally thinks that this is a good thing. Because that moment of him seeing Grogu and Luke training and meditating on top of that hill, I think he probably thinks to himself, do I really want to take Grogu away from this? And listen, I think at the end of the day, personally, I do think that these two will connect once again. Like, I had no idea that Luke Skywalker was going to offer up the decision for Grogu to make. Do you want to be a Jedi or do you want to go back to the Mandalorian, right? And become the foundling or whatever the case may be. A part of me is like, how can you let a child make that kind of decision? But homeboy is probably, I can't remember how old is he, 50 years old, 100 years old, maybe at this point in time. I can't remember how old Grogu is at this particular point, but I'm sure he's old enough to make his own decisions. But it is fascinating to me that it is Luke that's giving him that option. There's a line in here that Luke says when he's talking with Ahsoka about the idea of, I don't know if he has it in his heart, right? Let me see if I could find that line where he says it. Oh, if his heart is, he doesn't know if his heart is even in it, talking about the idea of Grogu, because you can clearly see that he does miss Mando, that there clearly is still a massive attachment there between those two. And I do like the idea of Luke trying to figure out where his heart truly is. Do you even want to be here? You know what I'm saying? Or would you rather be with Mando? So I personally think that Grogu's going to choose Mando. I personally do. Even though it's pretty cool at the idea of Grogu maybe being Luke's sort of first apprentice at this brand new like temple or school that we get the opportunity to see Luke building. If anything, I'm kind of under the impression that this is the same temple or the same school that we see burning down in the Last Jedi, if I'm not mistaken, when it's revealed at least as to what happened with Luke and Kylo, or I should say Ben Solo at that time. So I'm assuming it's the same planet and the same school. Definitely a lot of gaps to certainly fit in through that time period. But there is a part of me that's thinking that Grogu will make the decision to go back with Din Djarin. And I mean, how can you have a royal Naboo starfighter, right, with an extra cockpit that's supposed to be for an astromech droid? How can you have an extra cockpit and it not be filled with something? And I can just easily imagine right now Funko Pop figures coming out of this starfighter with a big old Mando head, and then just above him, a big old Grogu head. Book it. I'm pretty sure Funko Pop will probably create something like that here within the next year or two. But I really did enjoy this storyline here. Getting the opportunity to see Grogu training with Luke, I thought was pretty great. I'm assuming if anything, Mark Hamill probably returned once again to go ahead and do this role, de-aging him from 70 years old back down to 30 years old. But again, like while it's one of those things, guys. While I don't mind seeing this, I loved it. I love seeing it again. There's a part of me that's thinking to myself, does this even belong in a Book of Boba Fett series, right? Like, again, I feel like this is something that should have been told in Mandalorian season 3. And there's kind of a part of me that's hoping the fact that they continue to push a returning Luke Skywalker, it does make me think at some point in time we might be getting ourselves a Luke Skywalker series on Disney Plus, or he's just going to continue to pop up in glorified cameo roles. The fact that we've seen Ahsoka and Luke Skywalker interacting in here makes me think he might come back for an Ahsoka series briefly. Also, I love seeing the connection between these two. The fact of Ahsoka calling him Master Skywalker. Kind of gave me chills a little bit, and it does make me curious as to what other like conversations might these two have certainly had with one another. Did Luke ask at all about his father? Does he even know that she's a former apprentice of her dad's, right? I really want to know the nitty-gritty of details that they talked about. And have they met before prior to this particular moment? Have they kept in contact over this past, the 5 years since Return of the Jedi and The Mandalorian? So it's about maybe a 3 to 5 year gap or something like that. So I am kind of curious as to when they linked up. That's something I definitely would like to learn a little bit more about, honestly. But I love the Ahsoka stuff in here. Can't wait to see what a Rosario Dawson winds up doing, certainly going forward. When it comes to Luke, though, I will say this. At this point in time, I'm actually okay with the idea of them recasting somebody to play the role. I know a lot of people have been asking for Sebastian Stan to probably play Luke Skywalker. I do want to see something, though. How old is Sebastian Stan? He is 39 years old. So that actually might work out. Actually, now that I come to think about it, 39 years old, Luke is probably, I guess Luke would probably have to be in his 30s at this particular stage in his life. So, yeah, I could still see a Sebastian Stan doing a role for Luke Skywalker. Even if they want to bring somebody in to do the role, at this point, I feel like I would almost prefer it. While I didn't mind the CGI and the special effects too much, I actually think that they look better in here than what they did at the end of Mandalorian season 2. And I think that says a lot considering this is and a lot more broad daylight sort of thing, right? So I think you would see more details that kind of give it away. And I don't think the CGI is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it looks better than what it did in Mando season 2. There are moments where it feels off, where there feels like there's an emotional disconnect at times. Maybe the idea of like whoever's doing the voice or how they're changing the voice around to maybe match the movements of the de-aged face and stuff. There is sort of a disconnect that I'm feeling with just a lack of full expression that a normal face can do based off of just CGI and a combination of the voice kind of attached to it. So it definitely hit or miss, but again, I think it looks better than what it certainly did in Mando season 2. So I am okay with them recasting. I don't know why they haven't decided to do that yet. Maybe they feel, look, Mark Hamill still wants to play the role, so that's fine. Maybe Mark Hamill doesn't want to give up the role to anybody else. They did they did recast at least for Han Solo, which I thought was a really great recasting. So I honestly think you can do the same with Luke Skywalker. But we'll see what Disney certainly decides to do in there. And then also, when it comes to Grogu, I love the idea here of Luke trying to open up his memories. Asking him the idea, do you remember where you came from? Do you remember what home was like? And the idea for us to be able to kind of get a flashback sequence for Grogu, I thought was amazing, especially considering the time period, as this takes place during Order 66. So you see the infiltration of the Jedi Temple. You see the Clone War, the clone troopers coming in, shooting up and killing the Jedi. I'm assuming capturing the younglings or killing the younglings and Padawans and things like that. And it seems as though Grogu was certainly one of those characters that was definitely taken. So, what his past was like even before then, who certainly knows? I don't know if that's like the earliest memory that Grogu certainly has or not, but I did appreciate the connection back to the prequel series. So it just goes to show you how long Grogu's been captured, if you will, by the Empire since Order 66 that entire time. So really great stuff in here, man. Really great stuff. We did at least get a Boba Fett sighting in this episode, so I guess that's that's a plus two, as they're certainly sitting around sort of their war map, trying to figure out territories, manpower, and things like that. So cool cameo from Boba Fett in his own show, I guess. It's just weird to say that. But there's a part of me that's hoping that when we do end off this limited series in next week's episode, that's going to be more Boba Fett, more everybody included. Whether or not that means we actually get the crime war happening, the battle for Tatooine territory, who knows? But I am really curious to see how they plan on wrapping this up. And also considering the fact, for those of you who don't know, there is an untold story between Boba along with a Cad Bane. These two clearly know of each other for sure. Cad Bane referencing Boba Fett in here, knowing exactly what his past was certainly like, really trying to warn people from even helping this man out. I am kind of curious if by any chance we will get sort of a flashback to maybe like a live action adaptation of the Dave Filoni animated story where Cad Bane and Boba faced off with one another. I do wonder if we will get ourselves sort of a flashback sequence to that. I mean, look, that is child comes to flashbacks whatsoever. So I am kind of curious to see if we'll get to more explained in regards to what those two characters past was certainly like. So fantastic episode, best of the season, amazing cameos, amazing way to push the story forward, especially when it comes to the overarching Mandalorian season. It is one of those things where I think maybe Mando season 3 has so much story and so much certainly going on that it feels like they wanted to maybe move some of that story into Book of Boba Fett so they can kind of get everything explained and fleshed out a little bit more. Unfortunately, to the detriment of the actual Boba Fett character, which the purpose of this series was to bring Boba Fett back and sort of recapture what we've always expected of him, which I think is one of the other reasons that I have issue with it, is that, based off of what we saw in Mandalorian season 2, the visceral violence, if you will, right? The terror that Boba Fett brings when he's on screen. I feel like we have not seen that practically at all, like super minimal, if you ask me. And I honestly don't think that this series has done anything to raise the stock of Boba Fett at all. If anything, Mandalorian stock is raised, Grogu's is raised, Ahsoka's has certainly raised. But Boba Fett himself on his own show feels to have become all of a sudden a little bit of an afterthought. And so I'm really hoping that when this series does conclude, that the next week's episode and finale is all Boba, or at least really brings it. Because when you bring on somebody like Robert Rodriguez, right, to kind of be a showrunner or at least helm, this particular project, I'm expecting a lot more from Boba Fett than what we certainly got. So, while I am enjoying it, I think, did they sell us on something that they're truly not delivering? I think is where my mindset is at right now, trying to balance the loving what I'm getting, but I'm like, is this really what I asked for all at the same time? Because I was really expecting Boba Fett to be elevated a little bit more than what he certainly is. But we'll see, guys. Listen, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions, but I definitely want to go ahead and know yours. What are your guys' thoughts? How are you feeling about this series so far? Are you as conflicted as I am because you're enjoying it so much and want to see more Boba Fett all at the same time? Or do you think this makes perfect sense in regards to how they've blended everything together for this show and are pushing the overall arcing story forward? Definitely go ahead and let me know your thoughts in the live chat or the comment section box below. A couple of things real quick here. Marcelino Vasquez has a couple comments I want to get to. He does say, off topic, but common misconception, Lucasfilm always viewed the on-air Clone Wars as still canon, even after the show was canceled. It's just that they were going to be told in a different format. So maybe this is the format, the live action format that they prefer, which is one of the reasons why I have my fingers crossed that maybe what they didn't get the opportunity to air, maybe they'll showcase in live action form in a flashback. But that's just me assuming. The Son of Dathomir comic was originally a 4-episode arc for Clone Wars, but was written into a comic when the show was canceled. I do remember that. I do recall the Son of Dathomir. The Dark Disciple novel was an 8-episode arc, but told a novel instead and still viewed as canon. Yeah, I do love The Dark Disciple. Star Wars referenced the Son of Dathomir arc in several episodes. So yeah, definitely plenty of room for them to adapt, whether it be comic book into animated into live action. I definitely think they're certainly going to take their liberties when it comes to that, because I think the idea alone that Cad Bane referenced Boba, seems to know Boba, would probably imply the fact that yes, during this, maybe it's that unaired episode that he's referring to in regards to certainly their last encounter and everything that he knows about Boba. So should be interesting stuff, guys. But listen, at the end of the day, I want to know your thoughts. What did you guys think about all the cameos? How are you enjoying the Grogu, Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka storyline so far? Are you pumped for the finale? Definitely go ahead and let me know your thoughts in the live chat or the comment section box below, guys. And until next week, that'll certainly do it for us here, but we'll definitely be back with another live review and breakdown for you guys next Wednesday evening. So certainly join us then. And until then, do me a favor, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the force be with you. Bye.